Age of Fission radio show with your host, Lonnie Clark. We stand together and accept that we now live in a world transformed by Fukushima. Monday, Wednesday, and Friday from 8 a.m. to 9 a.m. Pacific Standard Time here on UCY.TV radio. We relentlessly engage every ear that listens. We expose and confront the complete lack of accountability for the nuclear industry. Consider social engineering programs who view our bodies, minds, and souls as assets on a balance sheet. We discuss vital current issues, interview activists, and engage our audience in an effort to allow all voices to be heard. The Age of Fission radio show creates a venue that all will choose. We encourage our listeners to reclaim their power and their courage to take action and save our planet from the ravages of greed and indifference. Our actions matter. Every voice matters. We remind our listeners that happiness is resistance. Love is greater than fear. Good morning, UCY TV radio listeners. This is Lonnie Clark. Let me say that again. I'm going to get this down soon. UCY.TV. Thank you, Jules, for this venue, and I really appreciate every listener that's listening. So the big news this morning is America's lost its boner. That's kind of sad, but that's okay. We're glad to see it go. I wonder what they have in store and why this is happening. So anyways, today is Call-In Friday, you guys. We get to talk about any issue that you want, something that's on your mind or whatever it is that we've been talking about. I would like to remind you all to go to the NRC again, www.nrc. Look for the drop-down box for comments under comments, public comments, and look for the hormesis, the no threshold hormesis comment section, and put your comments in. It is extremely vital that the NRC hears from you. We have until November 19th. I'm going to keep talking about it. Also, another thing that I'd like you to do is call your utility boards, get the courage up to call, find out who your utility board members are first, and find out, you know, what their phone numbers are, and give them a call and tell them that you do not want nuclear to be part of your utility board plan, that you are totally against nuclear, and we demand the truth from nuclear science. And that's what brings me up to something that I really do want to talk about. But let me get back to this because this is really important. I'm living in the Northwest where the Columbia Generating Station is still operating, and it is sitting on top of, now the state of Washington has discovered there are 12 earthquake faults it's sitting on top of, and they are active earthquake faults, and it is only 10 miles or so from Hanford, which would cause a major worldwide catastrophe if we had an earthquake there and the Columbia Generating Station was not shut down. So we really do need to get that. It's like Diablo Canyon. Anything on these earthquake faults needs to be shut down right away. And we need to demand the NRC really take some specific action. And so I also want to remind you of the names of the, what do they call themselves? Fukushima Daiichi D&D Engineering Company. Decommissioning, that's what the D is for, and decontamination. Like they're going to decontaminate Fukushima while these people are still alive. It's going to take about several 100,000 years, folks. And that's if we were to stop it. We have not even stopped it. It's outrageous. So I want to give you the names of the people running the D&D Engineering Company. It's no longer, and it is run by TEPCO. So these are the people that actually get paid by TEPCO. The president is the chief disaster officer. They call him the chief decommissioning. I'm going to call him the Chief Disaster Officer. Nahiro Masuda, Naohiro, Nahira Masuda, Masuda, and he is the overall guy over there making the decisions to just keep dumping radioactive water into the Pacific Ocean because, what else are we going to do? And we have, from Hatichi, we have 3 private industry guys on the hire. Hiroshi Arima. From Toshiba, we have Takuji Takayama. And from Mitsubishi, we have Sigumitsu Suzuki. So, this would be my suggestion, because I did this to Nahiro. Send an email and say, what is your long-term solution other than just dumping radioactive water into the Pacific Ocean? What's the plan? How are you going to stop what is going on in Fukushima? They're not stopping it. They're not even putting a hole in the dike. They're just like, blah, freaking out, standing at the dike, watching it leak and freaking out and pretending to work. So today is Call-In Friday, folks. You can give me a call, and oh my goodness, I lost the paper with the phone number. I don't know if it's memorized yet, but I will soon. Phone number is 718-717-8296. If anybody wants to call in to engage on any topics that we've discussed, I would be happy to talk to you about it. Somebody put in a comment on one of my channel videos and said, hey, I thought this was an anti-nuclear site because I put up something about the slut walk. You know, it all goes back to the same thing, the social engineering. And it even goes back to us, the quote, big news, John Boehner resigning from the House today as the Speaker of the House. He says he's going to resign as of next month, right? I haven't had a chance to catch the full story as to why, but whatever their real full story is, it's all just bullshit. Like, that kind of makes you nervous when the status quo feels the need to change whatever it is they're doing. So, you know, we are living in a time where we wake up every single day to the constant anxiety is a major catastrophe going to happen. And I call this, you know, the 9/11 effect. They've like traumatized our culture to the point where we live in a constant state of anxiety. Horrible. And that is, in fact, what I think the elite feed on. They want us to have a sense of anxiety and trauma and okay, I'm just not going to listen, just tell me what to do and I'll be good, I promise I'll be good, you know, the battered wife syndrome. And we get accustomed to people lying as if it's not that big a deal, and people lie to themselves. And, you know, once you start lying, you have to keep lying. Like, that's the hard part. The story just keeps getting bigger and bigger. It takes a rare bird to just come up to it and say, you know, this is why we have whistleblowers. Because whistleblowers spend their careers lying. And then one day, something triggers in their head and they just cannot take it anymore. They cannot be part of the system that's lying and causing trauma to everyone around them. Which is why we have the whistleblowers, and why Obama, they've gone after the whistleblowers and set out some pretty heavy-duty whistleblower laws, because the whole system is set up about lies. Like, it's that, you know, the inconvenient truth that nobody really wants to talk about. You know, the clapping for the Pope. Oh my gosh, the Pope. I personally, as an American, was very offended that the Pope, and I mean, people have made comparisons. We let Netanyahu, you know, stand on the Congress and talk to the Congress, which I thought was also wrong, but I guess throughout history they've allowed that to happen. But I personally have a really hard time with the Pope, the leader of the Catholic Church, standing in the halls of Congress when we have a country based on freedom of religion. So, you know, I find that super offensive, all of it. And I guess that's why we're here listening to UCY TV radio, because we can't stand it anymore. We can't take it. You turn on whatever it is that they call the news or the radio, or even listening to music. You turn on the radio station and you're just going to listen to music, and in between you get their propaganda. their little 5 minutes of news just to make sure you're living in a chronic state of anxiety and you're being programmed correctly. Let me give the number out again. I see that we're at 810. The number is 718-717-8296. It's call-in Friday. My name is Lonnie Clark, and this is the Age of Fission radio show. And on this show, we discuss and basically out the nuclear lies. And I am going to discuss in a second one of the ways that I ferret out the truth. And I guess other anti-nuke activists do the same thing. Oh, here is Mr. Vince. Hold on. Let me see if I can add him to the call. Good morning. You're on UCY Radio. This is Lonnie Clark with the Age of Fission.
Hey, Lonnie, this is Vince. I don't want to stay on long with you. I just wanted to call in and make a couple of comments. First of all, this social engineering that you talk about, and it's so perfect. I saw your 5 minute, I think 5 minutes, 5 seconds or something, your video on the book that you're reading. What a shame. What a shame that people's attention span are so short that you really have to cut it down like that. But unfortunately, that's true. It really is. So
I know. Well, I know. I've thought about it. I've talked to a couple of people. They tell me that they like the longer ones because then they do only watch for 3 or 4 or 5 minutes, but they come back to it and listen to it. So I think I'm going to go back to like a 10-minute venue. I mean, it's kind of difficult to sit and read a book, in front of a camera for more than 10 or 15 minutes. I find I start making a lot of errors. My own attention span decreases after about 15 minutes. So I just as soon keep it to, the whole idea is to get the and on top of that, I don't know if you've listened to any of my videos where I'm reading the book exactly like everybody else for the first time. So while I'm reading, I'm like, holy fuck, I can't help it. You know what I mean? I make these responses, so it sort of makes the video longer. A lot of times I'll have to go back and cut out because sometimes this thing with the nuclear is so, it's what I call a Scooby-Doo moment, Vince. I'm like, what? Like, huh? Like they have known. I am just nonplussed. They have known for a long time. I actually got an email, and I'm doing some research. I wrote a guy, this is what I do. When I read these nuclear apologists, and I read their stories in the news, the mainstream news, I write them emails and say, hey, what about this, this, and this? And I got a response back because they were saying, in this guy's article, they were saying that nobody in Fukushima died. There's nobody that died from the radiation in Fukushima. That's the story that they're pumping. And I'm like, what about the general manager who died of esophageal cancer within a year and a half of managing this? The guy literally wrote me back and said, oh, I've read John Goffman's book. I read that when I was in high school. That was long ago, but the new science and esophageal cancer, it's very dubious. We don't have real conclusive evidence as to what causes it, but we understand it takes 15 to 20 years. Now, what I learned, and this is really just because I'm in college and I've been doing a lot of scientific study research, that you can go to these studies, you can find those scientific studies, and the reason that we can discover why the things are inconclusive is because they create a scientific study that will only draw inconclusive evidence. Like they only have, like in Fukushima, they pulled they've only tested 5 fish, and of those 5 fish, they tested 3 different types of fish. So
I can't remember the specific, but Jules was talking the other day about how these studies are, like people that work for Monsanto, they go on to governmental positions, and they just switch these guys back and forth. They have these studies for confirmation of what it is they're trying to say, and they're all involved, right? Where's the objection to that?
Right. Well, that's the point, isn't it? And that's what I was just talking about, like the whistleblowers. What happens is these people are, like everybody else, turning out these rotten reports, hiding the facts, not discussing what's going on, and then somewhere along the line, their conscience gets to them. And that's why Tom and I talked about this. The conscience is massively important in what happens. It's super important for people to be able to walk and live in their conscience, because otherwise we're super screwed. If people were just out for money, and in fact we are super screwed, it's the reason that we're in this situation. But one of the things I do want to talk about today is I I really believe in EFT. Do you know what EFT is? Have you ever heard of that?
Yeah, extrasensory perception.
No, it's EF, like in Frank. It's
Oh,
emotional freedom.
electro frequency.
It's emotional freedom technique, and basically,
Oh,
you do tapping. It's nicknamed tapping because it's basically acupuncture that you do on yourself, and it's a really great way to change the subliminal programming that we've had and change our trauma centers. I actually learned about it in 2010, and ironically, I paid somebody $250 to learn this session, and then when I couldn't afford it again, out of desperation, I went to YouTube, and it turns out there's tons of free teachers on YouTube because they want personal clients, right? So I ended up again spending money I didn't need to, but it basically you tap. You can look it up on YouTube. It's EF as in Frank, Emotional Freedom Technique, and Richie Ellen had a man on who says he was a victim of the Illuminati and their child sex ring. And he says that it is extremely important. The number one thing that the elites and the Illuminati value more than anything is our subconscious mind. They want us to be miserable, quite literally. They like controlling our mind and our thoughts and having us think about things. Like, you notice we've all been sort of concerned about the 23rd. This little seed was planted in everybody, and all these little dates that they keep fucking with our heads about. So what this man is saying, everybody should learn EFT to reprogram yourself, to really focus on your own truth, to focus on your well-being, and to focus on being happy and learn to shake it off. And frankly, that is exactly what EFT has done for me.
Well, I would like to, at this time, make a special offer for all the listeners. For a $250 donation to UCY.TV, I will answer any question. And it may be I don't know, but...
I think that's great. And I'll answer questions, too, and give you my half-assed, half-blown ideas about what the world really is all about.
But hey, the last comment I'd like to make, and then I'm going to get off here. I don't want to hog up the air. But yesterday, I couldn't believe it. Okay, because I talk about all these issues that we talked about, and one of the big things is this the geoengineering going on above us. A buddy of mine, he's about half my age, puts him somewhere around 25 or so. But anyways, he's all like calling BS on me all the time about these trails. Oh, that didn't come from a plane. And, I spent a lot of time observing this. And a year or so ago back, I spent 5 days on a tractor bush hogging. And, it was it was when they were flying low. I haven't seen any low flights in probably a couple of years. I'm talking, somewhere 8 to 12,000 feet. When the planes are low and they're putting out these smoke ring trails in behind them and going back and forth in grids. So they're not nearly as obvious sometimes, and the trails are different. What we're dispersing up there are sometimes different. But anyway, so yesterday he says, man, I was out rocking today, and I watched this plane put out this trail behind it, and I watched it. He says, I understand what you're saying now. So, no matter how many times people say, oh, I love this. I've been called stupid. I've been called an idiot, educated idiot, educated retard, or something like that. Now, I'm not a genius. I took this test, I think yesterday on Facebook link, and I came over to where you're putting the right word, the right spelling, whether it be your, and so on and so forth. And I get them all right, and they say you're a genius. I say, are you fucking kidding me? If I was in first grade, I'd be a genius. This is basic spelling, and I'm supposed to be a genius? There's your social engineering for you.
Yes, it is. Those little tests on Facebook, they're really just to figure you out, taking names and counting heads, trying to figure out your own personal psychology so they can track you. That's the weirdest part, is like knowing that we really are in the stew. We are being tracked. And this is why I'm really big on taking back our own power and the EFT. Like, I was a very traumatized child, and frankly, I was a very traumatized adult. And I've been able, since I've learned EFT, to really shake it off. Things don't change around you, but how you feel about it changes, and our thoughts are things. So what we think about does manifest. It's very important for us for me, I really promote this. I think especially since we're living in the nuclear stew right now. We know we're in the age of fission, and the shit is literally hitting the fan. It's not going to. It is doing it now. We're at the beginning of the process. I really believe that it's important for us to focus on a vision with humans coming out of this, resolving the problem, maintaining peace, and coming out of it stronger, and having the oligarchs and their 1,000-year reign come to an end, because I'm super sick of the humanity and every creature on this planet being their little minion enslaved to do with what they want. We have a right as just sentient beings to just live on this planet in peace to the best of our ability. And that's what makes me get up every morning, is to, like, you know what? We need to help humanity assert its rights and help the planet assert its rights against these bastards.
Amen, Sister Lonnie.
Well, that's what I think. See, this is what the oligarchs can't. They unfortunately, see, they've been able to do this to the youth because they took civics out of class. But our generation, up until probably 2003, when civics was taken out of classrooms, they sort of indoctrinated all of us who went to school to believe in freedom and ethics and integrity. Like, that's, if you're studying civics in high school, and in, you know, from the time you're like in 9th grade and you're studying our Constitution and understanding what the idea was, we weren't a perfect nation. We were built on war. We did take over the Native Americans. We did brutally murder people. But as a nation, we've evolved spiritually and emotionally to where now we embrace Native Americans in theory. We embrace African Americans in theory. We embrace the rights of women and children. You know, we embrace the rights of trans people, even gay people. I mean, how many of us even knew what a trans person was 10 years ago? I can say I had no idea that there were people in that kind of state of being, that they, you know, like, I have a friend of mine who's attracted to women but feels like she needs to dress like a girl and doesn't consider herself a lesbian. I mean, that's all so mixed up. But, 20 years ago, that person would have just probably been beat up and killed. So now...
Well, there's a lot of information on that now, like, women during their pregnancy under a lot of stress, there's a lot of, misfiring information. And not, I don't believe we're evolving. I believe, first of all, we're devolving. So there's less information being able to share. There's less good information. So there is a lot of,
evolving.
There's a guy inside a man's body, vice versa, whatever. Some people say they're born that way and others say they're sucked into it, but that was a joke. I don't know personally. Okay. I just have my suspicions.
Well, look, I don't think we're devolving. I think lots of people are stuck in the past and stuck in the hate of the past, but I really think that we are transcending into it. Frankly, I think we're going to see so many deaths and so much death on this planet in the next 100 years, the idea of war is going to become obsolete because there will be so few humans. I don't think that...
Yeah.
We are not going to get out of this, alive, literally. Like, we are really, and what I count on is that we are going to have a remaining human spirit that believes in love and humanity. And I think that we will have a flowering of growth at the end of it. I don't believe that evil is greater than love and than good. And so, I mean, maybe that's my Catholic upbringing where I just really believe that the underdog's going to win. You know what I mean? I don't know.
Yes, I agree. I do believe love is more, as you say, love is more powerful than hate. And also, going back to what you just said, it's been quoted, the immortal words of Hank Williams will, no matter how hard we struggle and strive, we'll never get out of this world alive.
Amen to that. And you know what? Who really wants to live forever? Not me. I don't know. I've often wondered if Dick Cheney isn't a clone, like he should have been dead a long time ago.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know.
So I'm so proud you pronounced Boner's name right, and Jules did this morning too. What is this? Just say it like it is. Don't try to church it up, okay?
Church it up.
It's Boner. He's a dickhead, just like the rest of them.
Yes. But it's kind of weird that I don't know what it is about him that he's leaving now. Like, why now? That's the really thing. It's the October surprise, but they don't do these things without a reason. There's some reason that he's taking a back seat, and it's going to be very interesting to see who they prop up. But with the Pope's visit,
I suspect they'll probably put some blame on him for something, and then he's out of office. Then whoever will pardon him. It's the good old boy, the buddy deal. Always going on. Anybody who puts their faith in this electoral system that we have is so diluted.
They say
it's got to be so obvious now. They're not even hiding it.
No, well, they don't give a crap. It's kind of like it's exactly like that analogy I made a long time ago about the battered wife syndrome, frankly. I mean, when you I did grow up in a very violent household, and when you grow up in a really violent household, the perpetrator makes no pretense over the threat that they hold over you. And this is why they don't give a crap. They let us know straight up what they're going to do to us if we get out of line. We've seen people get shot, and it's not just black people anymore. Anybody who gets out of line is going to be killed. And, like Aaron Schwartz, he was given the mercy of being able to say he had a suicide. He was not suicidal. I don't believe that Aaron Schwartz killed himself. So,
You know what? It used to be that the bad cops refined themselves to the non-citizen class, the druggies on the street, the hobos and stuff. But, they're knocking on citizens' doors now and, kicking their doors in and killing them. It's a damn shame. I'm really proud I live where I am, where I do. I'm out here in the country. I said yesterday, I know everybody from cops to criminals and common folks in between. The law was out here. I know Wesley Potts. He's the chief, I guess I shouldn't say names. But anyways, chief investigator, I'm not going to tell on this other guy, but he's the drug cop out here. Anyway, so I come up to him, I said, hey, I said, I know where this big old pot patch is. And I gave him directions. I gave him directions to old boy's house. And the other cops, there's a highway patrolman and another sheriff deputy, but they got these stoic faces. And then a couple of cops that I know pretty good, they're Wesley, he laughs. He says, all right, I'll tell him you sent me. He said, no, never mind. I don't want to fuck with your stash.
God dang. What state do you live in?
I got to tell one more story. I went to an election last year. I switched the sheriff sign, and the guy that's the drug cop, he was running for sheriff against them, and I switched their signs out. And I went for this Barnes, and so I mess with the sheriff's department all the time. So I go in there, and Scott's in his office, and I say, hey, Scott, I got a little confession I need to make. And so he comes out, and he looks at me with a stoic face, and he's all like, oh, boy, what'd you do? So I told him I switched those signs. And he says, oh, man, that one dude was so mad, and Lucas was madder than hell. He said, just don't tell nobody. I tell everybody and laugh my ass off. I don't give a shit about what's legal. I care about what's lawful. Like Hal was saying, not the rule of law, but the law of rule. That rules. That's supposed to rule.
Well, that's
doesn't.
kind of how most of us live. I mean, frankly, Americans are kind of roughshod. We sort of do. We have our own internal sense of what's right and wrong, and that's kind of what we do. I don't think Americans very easily intimidated. What state do you live in, Vince?
Arkansas. Can't you tell?
No, you know what? I mean, past the Mississippi, it all seems exactly the same, and I'm scared shitless of all of it. I don't think I'd ever go back east. I'm afraid I'd be shot in the back. Like, I'm not just a liberal, I'm like a flaming liberal, so no.
Well, I like to call myself a redneck hillbilly country southern fried slice of country with a western swing.
With a western slang. Well, look, I think it's super important for us to remember that it is important, to navigate the law is very important. Like, people think that they can just know the law and understand it, but really, understanding how the law is actually exercised is kind of the fine art of understanding law, because as many black people see, it's not really the crime, it's like how it's exercised and who gets in. And this is why it's really important for us to pay attention to the judicial nominations and to the people running to the judiciary, because what happens is we pay attention to these big elections, and they really don't mean jack, because all these people are just sort of manipulated. But how the law is exercised is really at a much more local level, which really has to do with the judges and the
You bet. And you know what? Being in the part of the world that I'm at, and knowing the folks, I mean, from the mayor and of the town, and I'm 20 miles from town, but I'm not afraid to engage the cops up there and talk about the cannabis issue. And honestly, most of them will say, well, you know, they'll agree it's nothing more than a plant. And that's
well,
not
you
a
know,
problem.
here in Oregon, it's legal. And so, you know what our governor did? He'd let out anybody who had gotten arrested for marijuana charges. They dropped all the cases, and they're expediting the release of anybody who's in jail. And it's really freeing up a boatload of money in Oregon, to be honest, just letting people out of jail and releasing them from the court system. So
well,
it's a
yeah,
ridiculous
I
thing.
totally disagree with legalization. That word legal again. It shouldn't be illegal.
I think it's
And that's-
completely reasonable to have it legal. I think it's completely unreasonable to have marijuana. It's just like it's not even like alcohol. In my view, it's less toxic than alcohol. And it really, you know, it's ridiculous. Frankly, I think drugs should be legal, and they should be monitored and handed out like they used to. You know, the reason marijuana is illegal is because we can use it for fuel. That's the real reason, because we could actually turn it into something that's sustainable. There's a lot of products, the paper products that you can't use. And frankly, people don't, you know, they don't turn reefer wild. People that smoke marijuana, the ones that are going to do it already. And the ones who don't. And most people...
Right. Let me disagree with you just in a couple of points. It shouldn't be legal. It shouldn't be illegal. It's a plant. You can't, you know, how can you outlaw nature? So... And then I forgot my second point, but anyways,
that's because you're smoking
it's a plant. And with this legalization, I mean, cannabis. That was the other word. Marijuana is not a good word. It comes from Ashlinger and Hearst. You know, back in the early 1900s. That there's a few reasons why it became illegal, the hemp and cannabis plant, but it shouldn't be. There's so many uses. I lost the direction I was going, but anyway.
I just don't think that it's reasonable to throw people in jail or make people... That's part of the social engineering, is to make people feel self-conscious, like, so they're always looking over their head. You get arrested for a marijuana charge or something like that. You know, a lot of these people, they get for selling, they can never vote again. It's a really...
I've never voted in my life.
Well, there's lots of people who do vote, and that's a major consideration. So... It is. There's a huge, this whole issue, and frankly, the world hasn't, you know, you go to Colorado, the states where it has become a non-offense for the police officers, the world hasn't changed. Yes. Things are not, you know, it really is showing, this is why they don't discuss it, because it really does show that these draconian laws are really only there to control the people. It has nothing to do with welfare and safety and health, because if it were, we would be making the pharmaceutical drug companies illegal. Like, those people are really killing people, literally.
That's where we're going with this legalization, is control by the pharmaceuticals, by the state. You know, like in Arizona, you can have medical marijuana, but you got to buy it from a dispensary unless you're 25 miles from a dispensary. Then you can grow up to 12 plants. I mean, they've had it on the ballot here one time, or tried to get it on the ballot. Dustin McDaniels, the Attorney General for Arkansas, knocked it off because they didn't word it right. This is what legal gets. I'll tell you what else legal gets. It gets the price of cannabis, weed, pot, whatever you want to call it, from what was constant. Ever since I was a teenager, you could buy a quarter ounce of weed for $25. Now you're paying $100 and something for a quarter ounce of a
talked
plant
to somebody who lives
that you can grow in your yard or in your house. It's bullshit.
That's, in fact, somebody in Washington that I speak to actually said that in Washington, the black market is breaking the, quote, legalized system, because they've charged the price of, since it got legal, the price of the cannabis went up like 5 times because of the state and all the regulations. So the black market is breaking the system. So they're really in a quandary of what to do, because on one hand, it's freeing up a lot of money from the judiciary and the legal system, a lot of money. On the other hand, it's still instigated in a black market. And I think your point is correct about making it legal, not legal. It should be a non-categorized call. So,
I'm sorry, but that's
I'm going
racist.
to add a call.
Okay, that's.
Do you want to hang
I'm sorry. I'm laughing now. That's just racist, Lonnie. Black market lives matter.
I'll talk to you later.
Bye, Lonnie. Have a great day. Take care, everybody.
Okay, bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
Good morning. You're on the radio with Lonnie Clark at the Age of Fission radio show. Who am I speaking with?
Hello, how you doing, Lonnie? This is Road Dog here. I've been listening to you and Vince there chatting back and forth, and it seems to me like Vince is on the right track here. There should be no legalization or, anything like that. It's just a plant.
Yeah, I get.
And there's so many uses for it, and you got you got something wrong there. There's a big difference between hemp and marijuana.
True that.
Hemp is industrial.
I know, but it all comes from the whole base of the plant. It's all from the cannabis plant.
Well, no, there's different varieties of it and different species of it. That's the whole thing.
Uh-huh. Well, I see what you're saying. I get what you're saying. So my thought about how it's grown and what each part of it is used for is completely off. As you can tell, I have very little exposure to actually being in a room full of all, understanding the hemp and the difference between it. But I actually do agree with Vince. I see your point about it should not even be a legal issue. It's just a plant. And to make it a legal issue allows for the pharmaceutical industries to hone in on it and say it's ours.
Well, yeah, on that point you're right, because the pharmaceuticals did away with it. Well, actually, Hearst did, way back in the day because of the tree growing. But the pharmaceuticals took it over.
Yeah.
And because they can't make no money, hemp or marijuana.
Yeah. Well, that's the interesting thing is really it's all about we live in this culture where we literally are assets on a balance sheet. Each one of us is measured into how much money we're going to give back to them. How much they pull out of us, and that's really the system is that we are assets on a balance sheet, and we're considered, those of us on the outside of the elite rule are considered useless feeders. So, this is
right.
Well, really important.
We all know that meme there. I mean, you're talking to a intelligent audience right now. You know what I mean?
True that. Well,
at UCY TV.
This is what I think. I think that a lot of people are very intelligent. It's not a matter of intelligence. I think it really has to do with, do people have the emotional fortitude to be able to face because there's lots of intelligent people who just can't cope with looking at the overall picture. What we do on this radio station, I find.
Interrupt you here for a second.
Go ahead.
I have to kind of disagree with you.
Road Dog, I can't hear you.
They're intelligent.
Oh man, you're breaking up, brother. Hello? Road Dog.
You still say.
Road Dog, you're breaking up. Road Dog, Road Dog, I'm going to hang up because you're breaking up super bad. You can give me a call right back, okay? Shoot. Good morning. You're on the radio with Lonnie Clark, UCY Radio.
Yes, good morning, Lonnie.
Hi.
Hi. Hey, I wanted to talk about the Pope Francis and his appearance before Congress yesterday.
I will. If Road Dog, hang on just 1 second. First, can you tell me your name?
Pat.
Hi, Pat.
Hi.
I would like to talk about that, but I want to get a message out to Road Dog. He was just on the radio. I cut him out of the call because I could barely hear him his every other word. So if Road Dogg wants to call back, I'm going to have him join our conversation.
Sure.
Okay, I don't mind at all. I hope you don't mind. I like these, like when we get people on the phone and we can all discuss the same issues. It's kind of interesting. I did that once where we had people from different parts of the country talking, and it was very fascinating because we bring together people who would ordinarily not talk. So.
Yeah, well, one of the things that I noticed today is
Hold on just 1 second. This is Road Dogg. I'm going to add him back in, I think. Good morning. You're on the radio with Lonnie Clark, UCY Radio.
Hello.
Hello, Road Dogg?
You did call back, so I did.
Yeah, well, I'd like us to talk. On the phone is a gentleman named Pat that wants to talk about the Pope's visit. So I thought maybe we.
All right. Well, I'll tell you what. Then let him talk and you back on another show. Okay.
All right. Well, is there something that you'd like to discuss that was on your mind that made you call back?
Well, because you asked, and look, you just talk to that guy that wants to talk.
All righty. Well, thank you for calling in, Road Dogg.
Okay. I'll call you back later.
Okay, thanks.
Later.
Okay, thanks. Pat?
Yeah, so today I saw the news that, after Pope Francis's appearance yesterday, apparently the Speaker of the House, John Boehner, is resigning.
Yes.
So I think maybe there's a little bit of divine intervention there that's occurred to maybe open John Boehner's eyes, and he's decided to do the right thing, and he's not only quitting as Speaker, but he's resigning his seat in Congress.
You're kidding. Is that the news? He's resigning his seat in Congress?
Yes.
So that means that somebody found some dirt out about him. That's what that's about. That's
well,
he would not just...
The speculation that's going on is that what's happened is a conservative coup, actually, because of which is going to make negotiating a deal over the quote-unquote budget that's coming up in the next couple of weeks very unlikely. So there's a good chance that the federal government will once again be shut down by Republicans in the House.
Well,
because the conservatives are not happy. The hardcore conservatives are not happy with the Speaker.
Yeah, I know. They consider him to be a liberal. I get that. But, let's know what this has to do. I mean, on the heels of the Pope's visit, did you see him in the room with the Pope? I thought that was hilarious. He really had no idea what to say to the guy. He actually had not even done his homework enough to actually engage the Pope. I was just dumbfounded. But that really speaks to the whole issue of this radio show. It's the social programming. This guy's living in a bubble where he's just an obedient servant. It's really it's a completely fascinating thing when we think about this. Road Dogg and I were just trying to get into this conversation when he called. His phone started messing up, so I couldn't hear him, so I had to disconnect him. But he was talking about, the fact that we in this radio station, people that listen to this radio station are intelligent thinkers. And we actually don't respond in the way that most people do respond to these ideas. Because it's not just an accident that John Boehner is resigning a month, he's been told by somebody he has to step down or else he has some serious dirt that's about to come out. I was kind of nonplussed. It didn't even bother me that he was stepping down as Speaker because I know that a lot of House Republicans consider him to be a liberal in their caucuses. So that didn't shock me, but the fact that he is planning on stepping down, that's a pretty big thing, for him to cause an election to happen in his state by stepping down and leaving his post. Congressman,
definitely.
How long has he been a congressman? A long time. So either he's sick, or somebody in his family is sick, or there's some big scandal there's something behind that story of him stepping down, and he looked pretty bad. I mean, so I don't know, Pat. I honestly.
Well, what's behind it is the hardcore conservatives in Congress have forced him out, and they're getting ready to do battle with the rest of the Congress to halt government funding.
You know what, Pat, this is one of the things. I'm going to really call you on this because I'm really a stickler with words. Those guys are not conservatives. They are not conservatives.
Well, I agree with you.
They're spendthrifts. They are lackeys. They are not a conservative. Actually, the real conservative agenda takes care of the poor, takes care of the elderly, watches the budget, watches where we have the money. It's not just, we're not going to spend money on the people, but we're going to give everything to the private contractors in the military and we've got this out of control healthcare system that's all been subcontracted too now. So it's a really despicable thing that's happened. We had the potential to build something, and I personally think that the whole thing is going to have to collapse before we can rebuild it, which is why I was talking.
What's interesting is that Pope Francis is a good example of what you would call a classical conservative. He is very concerned about the poor, about people who are sentenced to death for crimes. He's against the death penalty.
He's not really concerned about the children they're molesting, though, in church.
But speaking of social programming, he's, I think, a good example of the kind of split that occurs. On the one hand, he's quite good on a number of issues. Climate change is another issue that he's on the right side on. But at the same time, he, anything to do with women, he can't deal with, out of the old medieval attitudes of the Catholic Church. So it's interesting to see how, on the one hand, as Pope, he is forwarding these ideas that are actually quite progressive and even liberal, while at the same time he has these other attitudes which are medieval in nature.
Well, he lives in an enclave of where women are not, I mean, honestly, the whole thing about the Catholic Church, to be honest, it's all just an arm of the bankers and the mega wealthy. It has nothing to do with God or anything that's really spiritual. I mean, to be honest, as a lapsed Catholic, I mean, I look at the guy and think he's just a freaking child molester. I don't respect him. This business of him patting little kids on the head, I don't get it. I honestly don't get how it's like adoring the Queen of England. I don't get that either. So it's all these ancient ideas about there's certain people that are deigned from God, and frankly, I think that's anti-human. It's anti-humane and anti-human, and I find it very offensive. And this whole idea, Vince and I were talking about it, and Road Dogg and I kind of mentioned it a little bit. It's the idea that we're progressing, and I think we're progressing. Some people think we're devolving. I think that there is a small strain of humanity that is progressing, and maybe that's how it always works. Maybe that's called, what they call selection, natural selection. Although I read a story that said natural selection, the theory of natural selection is kind of a bunch of bunk, that it's not really real. So.
Well, natural selection is essentially a fact. What people don't understand about it is that it's like the root of a tree, and there are branches of it and leaves, if you will, that change from time to time that aren't solid. But the basis of evolution and natural selection is really uncontestable. And it works not only in the physical world, but in the mental world as well. There are evolution of ideas and cultures, and so you can actually look at how ideas, if you will, reproduce themselves amongst populations, and how they crowd out other ideas, that's all basic, natural selection, but if you will, idea selection. Ideas compete with each other. They drive other ideas out. They win, they lose, etc. And actually, there's quite a bit of work that's been done on that. And, again, in terms of the Pope and religion and where he's coming from, The thing that's very attractive about the church and probably religion in general is just that it's a support group, and people who are part of it feel very comfortable, I believe, because they have other people that are believe the same thing that they do, and they don't have to think a lot because their ideas are handed to them.
It's instant family, exactly. It's instant family. It's really less about, connecting with God, because you can connect with God, but it's also about constant indoctrination. You go to church, you read the Bible, or you go to the temple, you read the Torah, you go to the mosque. It's constant indoctrination, and that's the relying fact is there's no deviation from the dogma that's there. Kevin Blanche says this all the time, eat your dogma burgers. Well, that's really what it's about. And people like us that are sort of asking questions are refusing to just continue to, down the dogma burgers. And I think it's critical. I think it's really the difference between us thriving. We are losing our species fitness as a species. Humans are not being able to reproduce. Eventually, especially with the radiation and the toxicity of our planet from the technologists, our species fitness is going down. And that is really, we have a big, gigantic planet, and that's part of the, 6th level extinction event, is that it's not just animals are dying en masse, it's our species fitness is reducing. And it's an important...
Absolutely. And, evolution has, if you will, a pronouncement on the results of species, which is, 99.9% of all species are extinct. And, I think humans are just like no different than any other species. It's kind of a human hubris to think, we're exceptional, but we're not. We're the same as every other species on the planet. And evolution's plan is, hey, 99.9% of the time, bye-bye.
Right.
And what really is the issue is how long it takes, and in our case, how much damage we do before we get shuffled off this mortal coil, if you will. But
I'm for us living. I want my children to live. I want my grandchildren to live. I want us to live through this period of time with incredible, I want us to evolve as a species to become more of who we really are, more of our love centers, you know what I mean? Instead of creating a story of it all is about war and hate, and cultures only get better when we have wars. And I really think that we can evolve past that. Oh, that's my goal. That's what I believe.
Oh, sure. Yeah, and I think when you there's a difference between, if you will, the individual view of things and the group, if you will, what happens to groups. And I think it's pretty clear, as a group, what the path is ahead. But as individuals, we have to live and interact, and we need goals to work towards. As you were saying, to throw off, the yoke of the dogmas of the past and move forward. But at the end of the day, I have to agree with Agent Smith from The Matrix, who had a comment about humans. He says that humans are viruses. And looking at, the damage that's been done to the planet, to species, it's, we're acting like a virus on the face of the earth, and that's unfortunate. And I think a lot of it has to do with the dogma, again, the idea that the earth is the property to be disposed of by man, not women, by men. That's a dogma that's in the Bible. It's right there in Genesis. God gave the world to men as their property, essentially. And there's this whole idea of property, personal, private property, that has evolved over time into these, these power structures, religions like, the Catholic religion, etc., to protect property rights over everything else. It's raised
That's what Scope is here doing. He's asserting his rights. So.
Yeah, and it's interesting because I think if you look at what Jesus actually said, Jesus was actually basically really a communist. He was not a capitalist in any sense of the word. He, advised rich people to sell all their goods and help the poor. And, a camel has a better chance of passing through the eye of a needle than a rich person has of getting into heaven. And, the one time, interesting, that Jesus got really violent was when he went into the temple and saw the money changers and the animal sellers. He got so mad that he turned over the tables and chased the bankers, if you will, the money changers and the animal sellers out of the temple. And it just shows, there is some core of ideas anyway that are really fallen by the wayside as far as, what we really should be aiming at, love one another, treat other people as you treat yourselves. These are good core ideas, but fall by the wayside.
I know. Well, I don't know. I have a hard time quoting the Bible, to be honest. Like I've been through the whole gamut of that, but it's true. And that the whole thing is about how we can hold ourselves up to a higher standard. And, that's really what it's really about. So,
and I think, like everything, there are very, in my kind of personal experience, there are very few things that are clearly all black or all white. Most everything is a mix, a shade of gray.
Amen to
and
that.
So there are things in the Bible that I think are absolutely useful and true, buried, if you will, amongst all the
this
other
is what it's
garbage.
all about. It's, again, I think it's really fundamentally social engineering. That's a lot of it has really just been about social engineering, and I think that's what's happening here. In the audience that listens to this radio station talks about social engineering because it does run our lives, and it is how we all have created divisions among ourselves, and we hold ourselves to these different standards because of the social engineering from the different churches and things. So I think this is why, for me, fundamentally, the nuclear issue really brings back, to me, it all comes back in lots of ways to how the nuclear industry took off, and it was through the social engineering and through managing the masses of perception, the perception of the masses. And really, in order for us to get it back, we have to at least acknowledge it and refuse to participate.
Well, for sure.
So, Pat, we have about a minute and a half left, and I'm going to let you go here. Is there anything else that you wanted to communicate?
Just that you have a great show, Lonnie, and keep it up.
I appreciate it. Thank you so much.
Okay, bye-bye.
Bye-bye. Hey, UCY Radio. So, listen, I really want to talk to Road Dog again because we were getting into something. His phone kept blinking in and out, which is why I disconnected him from before. So I think next Friday, I'm going to keep his phone number. He called in. And I'm hoping that next Friday, Road Dog will be available and around because I'd really like to talk to him about, we were just touching on this idea of the social engineering and of what people were doing. And, it was kind of hard because the phone was dodgy. And you'll hear this on the playback of the radio. So hopefully next week we can get a better phone call because I would really like to explore some of the ideas that Road Dog was just barely getting into. These are really important ideas for us to discuss, folks. And what's really more important than just discussing them is taking them into action in our own lives. And that means that we figure out how to eat well, be happy, shake it off. I would strongly suggest that people learn how to do EFT to get rid of their blockages from a long time ago. But we'll be back on the radio on Monday at 8 a.m. I appreciate all the listeners and all the support, and we will talk with you soon.